What's in my bag? Knitting edition. If you knit and you're as nosy as me, which I have a feeling you might be, then you probably want to know what everyone has in their knitting bags. Well, today we're going to go through my knitting bag. I'm going to talk all about my essentials, my nice to haves, and show you how I store it all so that I can find everything I need. If you're a beginner, then I hope that this video helps you decide what you need to invest in when you start knitting. And if you're a more seasoned knitter, then I really want to chat about what you agree with, what you disagree with, what am I missing. So I'm just going to jump right in on this one with
what's in the bag?
A
A shark or something?
Honestly, Nicolas Cage is just so ingrained in my vocabulary at this point that it is a problem. This is a decades-old trend. I saw Tomorrow Knits do this on TikTok and it awakened something in me. I grew up with this trend. It was in my mum's trashy magazines where someone would sit there with everything sprawled out on a table for a photo. The original YouTubers would tip out their bags and show you everything, and I've always just loved this trend. So I thought, why not do that for my knitting bag? Well, first up, let's talk about the bag. This is my knitting bag. It's a nappy caddy. You do not need a bougie knitting bag. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some really lovely ones that I adore and I wish I had, but this is what I have. You don't need to spend £100 on a knitting bag if you don't want to. And if you do want to, then amazing. I'm very happy for you. I'm very jealous. I love the ones by Redesigned. They are beautiful and have so many little pockets and stuff. Oh, just love them. But you don't need to buy one, okay? You can use what you have to hand. This is a nappy caddy. In a former life, this held nappies, wipes, bum cream, and we haven't used nappies for about a year, so I've repurposed it and now it's my knitting bag. And I do find it really good because it does have these 3 pockets, so I can kind of organise things, and it was free. I already had it to hand. If you don't have the funds or you don't want to spend money on a specific knitting bag, use what you have: a tote bag, a Tupperware, a corner on the shelf. Just use what you have to hand, somewhere to keep your knitting stuff together so that you know where everything is. So next, we should probably talk about, you know, the most essential when knitting, and that is knitting needles. For me, an interchangeable set of knitting needles is an essential. I don't think I would have started knitting without this set of interchangeable needles. My grandma tried to teach me when I was a kid with the long thingy ones, and I hated it. I never got used to it. In this set, it came with 8 different sizes, and I've only not used 2 of them, and I've also bought other sizes. So I've used loads of different knitting needles in my first 4 months of knitting. They are so convenient, having different cables, different needle sizes. I don't have to worry about whether or not I have a needle size when I start a project. They're just essential, okay? You need knitting needles to knit. I think if you're a beginner, obviously a lot of people are on social media promoting sets that cost about £200, and I'm sure that they're amazing, and they probably are a lot better than these. I have had some issues with my set, but this was £30 and the other sets are £200, and it's good enough. You don't have to splurge. You can get a basic set, but I do think that getting an interchangeable set is worth it, so you don't have to have loads and loads of individual ones. In this pouch, I have my knitting needles, the cables that you connect them to, and all the other paraphernalia that comes with interchangeable needles, like the little keys to make them tight, the stoppers for the ends, and connectors for the cables. Now, these needles are definitely a nice to have and not at all necessary, and that is my shorty set. These are only 5 centimeters long, whereas the other ones are 13 centimeters long, and I find these really helpful for small circumferences. If you're knitting sleeves a lot, or children's garments, or I don't know, other small things, then this is ideal, but not necessary. I find them convenient, though I do hate the fact that they're wood, but other people hate that short circumference, and you do not need them because you can magic loop, which is when you do a much smaller circumference on a very long needle and pull it through, which I've not really done before, so I can't really talk about that, but that is an option for you. Again, this has all the paraphernalia that comes with interchangeables, and this one has 7 sizes, of which I've used all of them. I also have my DPNs, my double pointed needles in various sizes. This was just a really cheap set. I think this was about £6 something for about 50 odd needles. And I also find these really helpful. You can also use them for small circumferences, for socks. I use them instead of a cable needle. So I haven't got cable needles, but when I've started cabling, I use these, and they're just very handy to have to hand. I use them when I'm swatching, so I don't have to pull cables out of my other projects. And they're just in a jam jar because we have an allotment, we preserve a lot of food, I have a lot of jam jars, so free. It was free to hand. Next, I'm going to discuss notions, and one for me that I use all the time is stitch markers. I bought this set when I started learning to crochet. I was making a Persian tiles blanket. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's stunning, but it needed a lot of stitch markers around each octagon. I also bought a smaller set of little metal ones which don't open, because I found when I was doing small needles with really fine yarn, it actually made a little hole using these big plastic ones. But stitch markers aren't essential. I use them a lot, which is why I have them, but you can use scrap yarn, rings, hair ties, anything you have to hand just to mark where you are. Just tie a little knot in some yarn, stick it on your needles. That's good enough. You do not need stitch markers if you don't want to buy any. Next, I have needles. These aren't really essential because you can technically sew in your ends with, I don't know, crochet hooks and stuff that you might have to hand, but they do make your life a lot easier. I have two types, so if you think of a very stereotypical sewing needle, the metal ones, I've got those in different sizes that came in this, and then I've also got some with a bigger loop at the top to just make threading yarn easier, especially when you're doing stripes or colourwork and you have so many ends. It's already a chore. Don't make it harder for yourself having to thread needles, like, okay? Just make it easy for yourself. It cost me about £2, like, I mean, it's up to you, but I personally make my life easier. I also have sewing pins. Again, not essential, but I do find that if you're knitting garments and blocking garments and want to pin them to the correct size, then having pins is helpful. They're pins, there's not really much else to say, is there? I also have some barber cords. So this is like a slim rubber cord, I think they're 2mm circumference, that you can jimmy onto the end of your needle and then pass all the stitches onto it, and it's just a bit stretchier and more flexible for trying things on. So again, you do not need this. You can use the cables, you can join two cables together, you can just risk it and hope your stitches don't pop off. I just like having this option to try on my garments, and I think trying on your garments whilst you knit is quite important. You want things to fit. You don't want to waste lots of time knitting something and then realizing it's too small. So having cords is helpful, and it does mean that you can try them on easily and more often, but again, not essential, just nice to have. Oh, and you can also like cut them and use them to put stitches on hold and stuff, which again, you don't need. You can put them on a cable, you can use a crochet chain, but a nice option to have. Now I have two little notions cases within my bag. This little metal tin has pretty much everything we've already talked about, but it also has like the stoppers and connectors for my interchangeables and, you know, stitch markers, sewing needles. I've got a little post-it, and this one actually lives on my window ledge there because I tend to knit here, so it's just really handy for me to have that. And this pouch is my go bag. When I leave the house with my knitting, I don't want to have to think about, do I need stitch markers? Do I need this? Will I change needles? I want to be able to just pack a bag and go. Obviously, if I'm taking socks out, then I'll just take the sock. You don't really need to take a lot, but if I'm taking a bigger project for a longer time, I go to soft play with my daughter and she runs around for a few hours and I get to knit. So I just like to have this little pouch to grab and go. This contains all of the same things as before. I've got pens, stitch markers, rattly. I've got them on a safety pin to keep them together, and just all the other things. Barber cord in case I need to put stuff on hold. I've got post-it notes because I like writing down my tally of what I'm doing, and it's just convenient to have. So if I'm going out, I can just grab it, pack my yarn, pack my project, go. What should I call this section? I guess other tools. Measuring tape. If you're making clothes in particular, you've got to make it the right size, so it's handy to be able to measure how long you've knitted, make sure it's wide enough. I also have a clear ruler, which I find really helpful for measuring gauge swatches, but my husband stole it. Rude. He has a 3D printer, so he's often measuring to make sure things are printing properly, so I'll let him off, but I do want it back. Self-explanatory. I mean, you don't need it. You can wing it and hope for the best, but personally, I want to measure my clothes to make sure they aren't going to end up mammoth or petite. This was just one that we already had somewhere in the house along the life appeared. I have another jam jar, of course. Scissors. You need scissors to cut yarn. I mean, you don't need scissors. I guess you could just go and snap it. So I guess you don't need them. Again, we just already had these in my go bag. They're just old nail scissors. You don't need bougie scissors. Just whatever scissors you have. Kitchen scissors, nail clippers, IKEA scissors. I've got pens, pencils, highlighters. Again, I print out a lot of my patterns, or I used to do so more than I do now. Now that I'm more familiar with pattern writing and techniques, I don't necessarily need to print them out the same, but I just like being able to scribble on them and keep note of where I'm up to, so if I come back to a project after it's been lingering on the shelf for a month, I know where I'm at. And then I have various crochet hooks. Sorry, aggressive. Crochet hooks. I use these to ladder down if I drop stitches. I use them to make a crochet chain to put stitches on hold. I use them to crochet technically, though I haven't done that since February. And they're just very handy to have, and you don't need to have a whole set of different sizes. You can probably manage with one medium one. I like to have the same size as my needles, so if I'm picking up stitches it's relatively consistent tension, because I've got a 5mm needle and a 5mm hook. Not essential, but handy, and a easy way to like fix your knitting if you do make mistakes. Other tools. I've also got some random crap, some buttons. These are for my daughter's cardigan. She picked them out herself at the local yarn shop with the assistant. She got the assistant to get them all down and was like, they were deciding which were the most sparkly, and yeah, they're gonna go on her cardigan at some point if I ever finish it, but it's the most hideous yellow, so I don't really like looking at it, so it might take a while, but whatever. Scrap yarn, which is also handy for putting stitches on hold. It's handy for crochet chains for putting stitches on hold. It's handy for stitch markers. It's just handy, isn't it, to have scrap yarn to hand. This is dropped saffron and plum, if you like this colour, with my hair attached to it. Who needs mohair? Notebooks. This little bitty one, this is the one. Creaky house. Stompy husband. I also have some notebooks. This little diddy one is the one that I like tally all my stitch counts in and carry around with me. It's even got a pen wedged in it. And this bigger one is more when I've got ideas for things that I might want to try and like self-draft in the future, or if I'm looking at colour schemes and I'm like getting my thoughts out, I just scribble. It's my scribble book. Brain vomit book. I also have a little section for electronics. I'm using that term. I mean, things with batteries. My debobbler, which isn't essential, but I do think that looking after your knits and extending their life is important, and a debobbler is a really good way to do that. I think particularly if you're doing garments, it's nice to be able to freshen up your garments and help them look better and live longer, so you can enjoy them for longer. This one's my favourite. This is a clicker, and I have a stand for my Kindle so that I can read whilst I'm knitting and just click away without having to reach and scroll. It was in my bed. My husband got it me as a birthday present once, kind of as a joke, but it was like my favourite thing ever. So I can lie in bed in the winter under my cover with my hot water bottle and just click, click, read, and not have to, you know, get my hands out in the cold. so lazy, but I really recommend it. Then I've got a microphone for recording YouTube videos. It's terrible. I'm still working on trying to make the audio work better, but I have it. It's a very cheap one. Not essential if you're a knitter, because unless you're doing YouTube, then you don't really need a microphone. And again, I've got a little clicker so I can just take finished object pictures wearing them without having to put the self timer on, because that's always a debacle and I always end up looking like this. So this just makes it a bit easier to take 300 photos. And then I've got my headphones. These are just obviously a thing that I already had. They're not specifically for knitting, but I spend a lot of time with my daughter, so if she's busy playing Play-Doh and listening to Taylor Swift, I can put on my headphones and watch something while she's beavering away. Or in the evening, if I'm up late, I can listen to my podcast whilst I knit, so I just keep them in my knitting basket so they're to hand. So that's my knitting bag. I feel like I have to put a disclaimer that this is my home knitting bag. I don't want someone to comment like, how does your stuff not get wet? I'm not lugging this around York, okay? I'm lugging it around my home. It's just nice to have the option to carry things around the house if I need to in an easy way. I knit in the living room, I knit in the office, I knit in my daughter's bedroom on her floor while she's trying to sleep. So knowing I can just grab everything and not have to disturb her while she's falling asleep, or not have to, God forbid, walk 50 steps from upstairs to downstairs. I can just take it all with me, okay? That might be overkill for some people. I would love to know what your setup is like. This lives on my bookcase in the living room. It's next to all my whips, so everything's together, which I think works really well as a setup. I also tend to just wedge it down the side of the sofa because I'm lazy. Oh, I forgot my favourite thing. I have a clipboard. Yeah, I had a spare clipboard, which is not a sentence that many people say. We put clipboards up on the wall so my daughter can pin her art onto the wall and like switch it a lot. She's very crafty, she does a lot of watercolour, she brings a lot of stuff back from preschool, so I just thought put them on the wall for her. But we had a spare one, so I use it for my patterns, scribbling off, and I feel very put together when I've got my patterns printed on my clipboard. Now that's overkill, okay? That is not essential. So as I said, I would love to know if you agree with my essentials and nice to haves. What is your knitting bag setup? Do you have a little organised caddy like me? Do you have a bookcase full of all these different knitting tools? I would love to know. And if you're a newer knitter, then I hope that this kind of gave you a bit of an idea of the sort of tools that you might want or need to start knitting. I hope that wherever you are, you're having an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video. And hopefully I'll find my ruler.